Good morning, everybody. We saw your tweets pour in yesterday. The Bay, Sephora, Lululemon, all stores that have closed down temporarily in response to COVID-19. But what about the ones that stay open?
That's right. Premier Ford's state of emergency announcement yesterday didn't order retailers to shut their doors. And here to talk about that, the industry's reaction to the virus, Karl Littler from the Retail Council of Canada. Good morning, Karl. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Karl, first question is, some workers are complaining. We're seeing the tweets from everybody. They're saying people don't need to buy a pair of jeans right now. Clothes, electronics, stores like that are staying open. Why are they not closing down?
Well, first, let's talk about the kinds of things that are wants versus needs. And I would push back on the issue of electronics. If you've been asked to work from home, if you're having difficulty communicating in that case, you're going to need a phone. You're going to need a phone plan. You may need a computer. You may need peripherals. That is, and that's not just for home use. I mean, that is also true for doctor's offices and so on. So, I mean, there are certainly some things that are more wants than needs, but they don't fit neatly into the category of grocery or pharmacy. You've got, if you're all cooped up in a house and you need to change your HEPA filter, you probably need access to a hardware store. Ditto if you need a carbon monoxide alarm replaced. If you have pets, you need to be thinking about that. And of course, we're thinking about it from a Toronto perspective. But if you're out in a rural area, you may need stuff for farm equipment or animal fodder. So there's a lot of retailers that are selling stuff that is in the needs category, not simply in the wants category. And that doesn't fit just neatly into the boxes of pharmacy and grocery.
Very good points, actually, because a lot of people don't think about all of those other essential needs that might not be a part of our everyday life. The Bay did decide to shut down temporarily, and other stores we've mentioned have as well. Do you think we'll see more of this going forward?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, it's sort of a story of two different situations. Everybody's seen the situation with grocery shelves and obviously a lot of sort of panic buying, if you like. And so grocers have been working hard to replenish that. But that's a lot of foot traffic. If you look at things like clothing and so on, actually social distance is less of an issue because their foot traffic is way down, their sales are way down. And I think, they're obviously feeling an obligation to their employees, but are also looking at other channels, pickup, delivery through e-commerce and so on. So I think a lot of them are assessing it. I think you will see outside of that needs area, which is quite broad, I think you will probably see further closures.
And that's it. And, you mentioned some of those retailers that are staying open, like the clothing stores, and they want to help out their employees financially, of course, as well. What are they doing to keep them safe in this situation?
So, everybody given that, we've been with COVID-19 since the end of January now, everybody developed protocols around hand washing and sanitizer to the extent that it was available, surface cleaning, pushing social distance. That's not always easy in smaller store settings, and not everybody was really attuned to that social distance piece at the outset. But in every case, you've had a lot of training. In some cases, for example, people are providing disposable gloves because, you're touching work surfaces and so on that, the customers have touched. Others have gone to the point of wiping down carts. So it's a bit different depending upon the format of the store, but there's a real push on that front. But no question that the health and safety of our associates is paramount in a lot of the decision making here.
And say the store and my employer is doing all those methods and taking all those precautions, but I decide as an employee that I don't really feel safe. I don't want to come to work. Do I have the right to say, no, I'm not going to come in?
So yes and yes. I mean, obviously you have the right to walk away altogether, but that's not a practical outcome for most people. They don't want to lose their job. But there is protection under the health and safety legislation in Ontario that allows what's called a work refusal where there are concerns about the safety of the workplace. And essentially, it's a two-stage process. So if an individual says, I'm concerned, I don't want to work, then there's an obligation, and every workplace has to have a joint health and safety committee, and that is workers and management. And so they have to make an assessment. Is that refusal objectively reasonable? Obviously, if it is, it needs to be accommodated. If it isn't, then it can be elevated, and a Ministry of Labour inspector can be sent out, and then the Ministry of Labour inspector will make the determination, is it objectively reasonable? But there's also an informal process. I mean, employers are trying to accommodate. And so if somebody is concerned, they're nervous about it, maybe they have underlying health conditions, so they might be at greater risk. Most employers are actually accommodating without it going through a formal process.
What types of compensation can the employees then expect to get? Do we know if they do decide to close?
Yeah, I mean, so this all depends upon the length of this, right? So a lot of employers have some coverage for sick days. But typically it's a few days. And so at this time, you've got employers whose revenues are completely plummeted. I mean, many of them are now operating in negative territory. They're paying far more out in rent and so on, and taxes and, so forth, than they're getting in revenue. So clearly they can't sustain it. We expect today that the federal government is going to make some really major tweaks to EI. We're sort of hopeful that that may actually be a higher than current income replacement rate, which is 55% currently, that they may do a fair bit more on work sharing. We're obviously in a position where many of our employers want to make sure that they can continue to pay their workers' health and dental benefits during this layoff. But it's not something that the employers can shoulder by themselves because, this could be obviously on for a period of some months. And so we expect today that the federal government will be stepping up with a much more robust kind of approach and flexible approach under employment insurance. And we're hoping that that'll provide, a very substantial part of income replacement.
There you go. Karl Littler from the Retail Council of Canada. Thank you so much. Great information right there.
Thanks
for having me on.